They say nature is cruel, that the wild follows rules forged in blood and instinct. But what if I told you those rules get broken? That sometimes a predator and a prey animal can defy millions of years of evolution to form something that resembles friendship. That's not a fairy tale, it's reality, and today we're diving deep into some of the most jaw-dropping, heartwarming, and truly unbelievable friendships ever witnessed in the animal kingdom. You might think a lion and a gazelle can only meet in a chase, but in one sanctuary, a lion lived peacefully for over a decade with a zebra, even letting the zebra nap beside him. Across the globe, stories like this aren't just flukes. They're proof that animals are capable of emotional bonds that science still struggles to explain. In a world where survival is supposed to be brutal, where instincts dictate every move, and where the food chain is law, some animals decide to throw all of that out the window. Across the wild, in sanctuaries, and even in our backyards, we've seen bonds form that make no sense on paper, but are real, emotional, and undeniably powerful. These are the kinds of friendships that make scientists scratch their heads and make the rest of us feel something deep in our chest. We're used to seeing animals as either predators or prey, dominant or submissive, solitary or loyal to their own kind. Wolves roam in packs, tigers walk alone, elephants stay with family. But what happens when those rules are broken? What does it mean when a tiger plays gently with a dog? Or when a monkey nurses a kitten as if it were her own child? Are they confused? Or do they know something about connection that we've forgotten? Let's start with one of the most famous duos. Bubbles the African elephant and Bella the black Labrador. They met at a wildlife reserve in South Carolina. Bubbles had been rescued from ivory poachers. Bella was just a stray dog taken in by the staff. They should have ignored each other, but somehow they bonded immediately. Bubbles would use her massive trunk to throw a ball, and Bella would leap into the river to fetch it. Bella would climb up Bubbles' back and jump into the water from her head like a child diving off a dock. Videos of them playing together went viral, but what stood out most wasn't the novelty, it was the joy. You could see it in their movements, the way they paused for each other, waited, engaged. It wasn't just play, it was shared happiness. Then there's Milo the dachshund and Bone Digger the lion. Their story begins at an animal park in Oklahoma, where Bone Digger was born with a metabolic bone disease that stunted his growth. The other lion cubs played rough, but Bone Digger couldn't keep up. Enter Milo, a tiny dog with no fear and endless energy. He'd sneak into the lion enclosure and curl up beside Bone Digger. He licked the lion's nose, tugged at his mane, even barked at visitors like a miniature guard dog. As Bone Digger grew, eventually reaching over 500 pounds, the friendship remained unchanged. Milo would climb on his back, gnaw on his ears, and Bone Digger would respond with gentle nuzzles. At feeding time, they shared meals, side by side, meat and kibble, no tension. The trust was absolute. Experts say that Milo must have bonded with Bone Digger before the lion developed a full predatory instinct. But even if that's true, it doesn't explain why Bone Digger continued to protect Milo, snarling at anyone who came too close to his canine friend. Another iconic story comes from the legendary gorilla, Koko, famous for her ability to communicate using over 1,000 signs of American Sign Language. Koko shocked the world, not just with her intelligence, but with her heart. On her birthday one year, she was asked what she wanted. She signed cat, and so the researchers brought her a litter of kittens to choose from. Koko gently picked up a grey one and cradled it as if it were a newborn. She named it All Ball. What followed was months of nurturing, grooming, and companionship. Koko would stroke the kitten while signing soft. She would carry it in her arms, sit with it in her lap during enrichment time, and sign love when the cat curled up beside her. Tragically, when All Ball died in a freak accident, Koko signed bad, sad, frown, cry. She mourned visibly for days, refused food, and stared into space. Her grief was unmistakable. It wasn't just a gorilla playing house with a toy. It was an emotional bond, pure, deep, and real. Then there's the unexpected friendship between a greyhound named Talk and a rescued baby owl named Shrek. At a falconry centre in the UK, Shrek was abandoned by his parents and needed constant care. Talk curious but gentle, was brought into the room during one of the feeding sessions. No one expected what followed. Shrek hopped onto the dog's back and refused to move. Torque wagged his tail. The two became inseparable. Shrek rode on Torque's back as he strolled through the garden. They'd napped together in the sun, and when Shrek began flying, he'd swoop down just to land beside his canine friend. The juxtaposition was surreal. A bird of prey and a retired racer forming a bond so innocent it defied biology. In Japan, a macaque monkey adopted a kitten. In Thailand, a tiger cub and a piglet grew up as siblings, napping in each other's fur. In China, a lioness raised a deer after it was abandoned. In every story, what we see is something astonishing. Animals rejecting instinct, refusing to follow the rules, and instead choosing companionship. Perhaps the most heart-stopping example of this phenomenon happened in South Africa, where a lonely orphaned elephant named Themba met a sheep named Albert. When Themba's mother fell off a cliff and died, rescuers brought the young elephant to the Shamwari Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. For days, Themba wouldn't eat. He stood in a corner, motionless, making soft crying sounds. Elephants are deeply emotional creatures, known to mourn their dead. The staff feared he would give up and die of grief. Desperate, they introduced Albert into the enclosure. A domestic sheep, tiny, woolly, and completely unprepared for the massive, grieving elephant in front of him. But something shifted. Albert didn't run. He didn't hide. He just walked up to Themba and gently nuzzled his leg. Themba looked down, curious, but hesitant. Over the next few hours, he followed the sheep around. By the next day, he was eating again. Within a week, they were sleeping beside each other. Albert's fleece pressed up against Themba's leathery skin. They played gentle games. Albert would headbutt, and Themba would swing his trunk. When it rained, Themba would use his body as a shield, so Albert wouldn't get wet. What was it? Pity? Need? Or was it something purer? A recognition that, despite the differences, they were both alone, and maybe they didn't have to be. That friendship saved Themba's life, and when he was finally reintroduced to a wild herd, Albert stood by the fence for hours, watching him go. These friendships raise questions we don't yet have answers to. Are animals capable of compassion beyond instinct? Do they feel love, not just for their own kind, but for others entirely different? Over and over again, nature seems to whisper, yes. These stories aren't about animals pretending to be friends for a camera. They're about compassion without words, connection without species, and a kind of pure instinctive empathy that we, as humans, could learn from. Whether it's a lion nuzzling a tiny dog or an elephant mourning with a sheep, these relationships show us that love doesn't care about logic. Sometimes it just happens, and when it does, it's nothing short of miraculous. Which animal friendship left you speechless? Drop your favorite story in the comments. We'd love to hear what moved you the most. And if this video made you look at animals a little differently, don't stop here. Check out our next video on how animals express emotion in ways we're only beginning to understand. Because in the end, the wild world may not be so different from our own. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next adventure. Stay curious, stay wild.